What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Launchpad podcast. I am your host, of course, Gabriel Hardy, and in this episode today, I had the honor of interviewing Ryan Sprague. Ryan is the leader of the Conscious Cannabis Collective. He is essentially this cannabis ninja who uses his voice and his platform to put forth systems and models in which people can start to interact with cannabis more consciously. And build a healthier relationship with cannabis. And I heard about Ryan a couple years ago on a podcast where he was putting forth some of these models, and I found it very interesting because I myself had a very complex relationship to cannabis. And this whole sort of topic of addiction, but in particular cannabis addiction, really interests me because it's something that, first of all, I've experienced for myself, but also because I think that it is sort of symbolic and emblematic of a lot of other things going on in society. And we kind of unpack that within this episode. You know, is it truly the cannabis that you're addicted to? So yeah, I think Ryan's awesome. We had a lot of fun. He's a really intelligent, sweet guy who's doing some great things. So yeah, make sure you go check out all of his stuff. I'll put that down in the description below. But other than that, I appreciate you tapping back in. I love you. I hope you enjoy this, get some value out of it. Subscribe to my channel, all that shit. Peace out. Much love. But yeah, it's really interesting. So I want to know what kind of feedback were people giving you on this cannabis that you're sharing with them, man? Because so I listened to your podcast with Aubrey Marcus, and that was the first place that I was introduced to you to. And this was probably like a year or two ago when I listened to this podcast. So I've been aware of you for a little bit. And then
Hell yeah.
I also heard you on the Paul Check podcast. And both of these gentlemen had a lot of favorable things to say about your cannabis. So I just got to know, dude, what are you doing to the shit? What are you doing differently?
It's a 4-part system, right? It's living soil, aka regenerative agriculture, Korean natural farming, aka like really maximizing on the microbe activity in the soil, which is really your entire system in living soil. Is like it depends on the microbe activity. So the KNF really like supercharges the microbe activity. And then we create a harmonized energetic space by utilizing biogeometry. And then the last and most important ingredient is a lot of fucking love and a lot of fun and a lot of joy. And that's like been my system for years, bro. And, you know, once I started adding biogeometry, I started noticing a lot shift in the final product. And that was like, you know, I noticed it for me, but most of the people I was connecting with during that time, you know, they weren't, let's say, highly optimized individual, right? They're just like my hometown friends and things like that. So they knew it was good flower, but they didn't, you know, they couldn't feel the subtleties like I could feel. So I just thought like, oh, it's just my cannabis. Like I probably have this special relationship to it because I grow it and yada, yada. So I kind of just wrote it off. I'm like, I know it's good, but you know, whatever. And then when I gifted Paul some cannabis, that was when, well, technically what I did was I first met Paul at HLC1 in 2019. And that's Holistic Lifestyle Coaching Level 1. And his wife, Angie, and this woman, Nicole, ran the class. But on the last day, Paul came through and everyone was starstruck. So I brought a couple grams out with me. This is before I had anything like I have today. I didn't have a business yet, nothing. And I brought a couple of grams out for me, right? Just like, you know, not have to go to the dispensary. And then when I was in class, when I saw him, I was like, oh my God, I should gift this to Paul. There was no plan to it. There was no like, I'm going to do this and this is going to do that. It was just like, oh, I should give this to Paul and thank him for just all the epic shit he shared with me over the years of listening to his podcast and whatnot. So I gifted him it. He was like, oh, thank you. And that was pretty much it. You know, like he pretty much just, you know, like after that was like, cool, thanks. And so then a year later, I've now left my job. I've started my business. And so I go out to his house for a workshop called Zen in the Garden. And so this time I brought him a full ounce and I saw him walking alone and I was like, hey, Paul, I got something for you. And so I give it to him. And as I'm handing it to him, he's like, dude, you're that guy from that HLC1 class. And I'm like, what? Like, huh? And he's like, dude, I've been trying to get your info, man. Like that stuff you shared with me, I've never found anything like it before. And I was like, really? And so then he was like, dude, like, how can I get more of this? Like, and, you know, do I pay you whatever? I was like, no, dude, I've never take payment for anything like this. I just like to gift it out. It's like my way of like, you know, giving back. It's what I do, you know? And so he was like, well, hey man, you know, you're a podcaster, like, are you looking to connect with more people? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, what if we set up a little deal where I'll help you connect with more people and you just keep me stocked when you come out to California? I'm like, done. So then through him, he started inviting me out to a lot of his like private get-togethers, and I went to his 60th birthday party and got to meet so many amazing people. And he was always looking out for me, being like, hey, come to this, it's a good business opportunity, meet this person, you know, give them some flour, let them know that I sign off on it too. And so after I went on his podcast is when I just asked him about Aubrey Marcus, and he was like, maybe. He was like, you know, he's not that into, you know, cannabis and whatnot. And I was like, okay. And you know, I didn't have any like, you know, kind of goal with this. I honestly didn't even mean to ask him about Aubrey when I finished up. It was kind of like I thought what was going to come out of my mouth was, do you have anyone else you could connect me to? And what came out was, could you connect me to Aubrey Marcus? And like literally when it came out, it was like, I don't know if you ever had that happen, where like it literally wasn't what I thought I was going to say. My whole mind was so confused. I went into like this almost like shock state of like, oh my God, I just asked for that. Like, and Paul didn't even budge. He was just making a volcano bag, and he's like, yeah, I can do that. He's like, just to let you know, Aubrey's not a big fan of cannabis, but I'll see what I can do. I was like, okay. So then 2 weeks later, I'm on the phone with my friend Jane, and I get basically, she's talking to me about this lifetime that she remembered during a past life regression where her and I learned to manifest in Atlantis. And I'm like, I'm here for it. So she was like, you still know how to manifest. Look how you manifested meeting Paul Chek. Because she used to come into the dispensary I worked at, and I used to talk about Paul Chek all the time. So when she said his last name, I get a beep on the phone, and it was Paul. I answer it, and he's like, have you checked your email today? I'm like, no. He's like, you should go do that. So I check it, and that's when Aubrey was like, I'm in. I'm really interested, you know, and so I get him some of my cannabis, and same thing. He's like, dude, what the fuck, right? And now I'm like, all right, this is interesting, you know, because like these are absolute high level gangsters, and they're all saying the exact same thing. Like Aubrey was like, dude, I've literally hated cannabis my whole life. I don't know what the fuck you're doing, but me and Valana are obsessed with it. Like, can you get us more of this? So I'm like, holy shit. And then I ended up meeting Sugar Sean O'Malley and Tim Welch through Paul Chek. And they same thing. They're like, you ruined cannabis for us. Like, your cannabis is the only one stuff we like to smoke. And then I met Sherveen Jafaria and Kyle Kingsbury and like all these people that I've looked up to for years, and they all gave me the exact same feedback. And now I kind of just expect it. Like, it's not like I'm like, oh, you better like it. It's more just like I expect that when I give something, they're going to be like, this is so weirdly different and whatever. I just got some to Danny Morrell and, you know, some other people too, but it's become kind of my living lead magnet, you know, that I just gift to people. I gift them a little bit of cannabis, and I'm like, hey, I could tell you what I do, or you could just go have a direct experience. And if you think it's really fun and awesome and you want to talk about it, cool. Get me on your show and I'll tell you everything I do and why cannabis that I grow is different than the stuff you're going to find in stores. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, that direct experience is really important. Letting it kind of speak for itself. Speaking of that, I would love to try some of your cannabis. So we're going to have to hook that up.
100%, bro. We'll have to hit a festival together, or I'll let you know whenever I'm, you know, whenever I'm traveling, as long as it's the legal state I'm going to, I usually bring a little bit with me, and happy to gift it out, man. That's like my favorite thing to do is just like grow, give away, gift people experiences, you know?
Awesome. I look forward to it. Yeah. So let me ask you, like, in the game of cannabis, in the market of it, and it's like, I've seen it evolve for probably a good decade now, because that was sort of when I started interacting with it, was about a decade ago. But it seems like there has been this almost never-ending rat race that has gotten us to this point where it is like the selective breeding of the cannabis plant to produce the highest amount of THC, right? And so we see a market that is like super saturated, and what is considered good cannabis is essentially nugs that are just like concentrate, you know, which you can aesthetically look beautiful, can smell beautiful, can definitely provide beautiful experiences. But like with your cannabis, are you selectively breeding for other cannabinoids rather than, you know, just THC, sort of like sledgehammer?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for me personally, I don't breed too much. I've done a couple outdoor, you know, pollinations and things like that, but I do go after certain cultivars and certain genetics that are selectively bred for, you know, just different types of experiences. I do grow some high THC stuff because sometimes I like a really strong dissociative experience, kind of similar to ketamine or something like that. I grow a lot of stuff that is right around like 15% Delta 9 THC, or THCA that gets converted into delta 9 THC, but also has like a high, like, 4 or 5% CBD. I grow a lot of strains that are very unique in their terpene profiles. So like the strain that has probably got the most notoriety behind it that I grow is Tahiti Lime. When I was traveling a lot in the beginning of 2020 and meeting a lot of new people, my friends from Virginia that run Enlifted, Mike Bloodsoe that ran Strong Coach, and a lot of my friends that were at Training Camp for the Soul, we were all traveling together a lot. We all took either one of those 3 programs together and then just met up in person a lot. And so everyone was obsessed with Tahiti Lime. Paul loves Tahiti Lime. Aubrey wasn't the biggest fan of it. He likes Tropicana a lot more. He likes more of the relaxing stuff. Tahiti's more invigorating, but it literally smells like a lemon peel. Like you stick your head in that jar and it smells like you're smelling a lemon rind. And, these days there's not a lot of strains that have that citrus or lemon type terpene profile anymore. Usually these days, everything's either gassy, kind of musky, or candy, and so like, and this kind of happens every like 5 to 10 years. There'll be like a new obsession. Like the latest one that's kind of transitioning out now has been like the gassy, kind of like garlicky type strains. And I love those too. Like I'm kind of like a smorgasbord type guy. I don't really have like anything that I specifically like, oh, I always need to grow that. I like growing a lot of different stuff for different reasons. But if I had to kind of narrow it down, I would say that I love the old school citrus strains. And I love strains that are kind of like median THC, so that you can like rip some good volcano bags and have a really good conversation and not like get super dissociated. Like for me, cannabis is all about being here now. It's not about like going out there. If I wanted that, I'd do a high dose of psilocybin or ketamine or something like that. There'll be times where, say, if I'm doing a deep meditation, like, yeah, maybe a little bit stronger THC to dissociate a little bit more. But for me, like cannabis is all about the human experience for me, whereas other medicines are really good at bringing you, kind of out of the human experience and back into whatever you want to call our, innate nature as divine beings, having this illusion, this dream world of a human experience. Whereas cannabis really connects me more to this experience I'm having right now, and also does allow me to feel that connection to divinity, but it allows me to, like Ramdas says, be here now. And my favorite thing ever, like I was mentioning to you, is playing. Cannabis to me really brings out my play muscle. And so being able to play with Nerf guns or, sit around a fire and have a really cool, philosoph hour, as I call it, this idea of having just a really cool philosophical conversation where there's no point to it. There's no end to it. There's no necessarily answer we're looking for. We're just actually okay with more and more unknown, so questions like, is the earth round or flat? I have no idea, but I want to hear from everyone around here what they think. Not because I want an answer like I know it's round or I know it's flat, just because I'm just curious. I don't need to know that answer. And that's what cannabis really does for me, is it brings me into these moments where I just get to naturally enjoy the process of whatever we're doing without needing to have an objective or any certain thing, which is completely polar opposite to the rest of my life. Most of my life is, I need to schedule things. I need to be on point to things. Making courses, there's deadlines, there's all these things that need answers, and so for me, why I love cannabis is that it really supports me in allowing my polarity to shift from a very masculine point of view to a very feminine point of view. And for me, the reason that I enjoy cannabis so much, and one of the reasons I utilize it so often, is that at this point in my life right now, I am okay with going really far into the masculine. I'm building businesses, I'm traveling a lot, I have goals that I'm reaching and things that I'm really excited to do. And so because of that, I really allow that polarity to be maxed out every day, just about 7 days a week. And so as a result of that, and pushing a little, more than is normal into that realm, it's pretty challenging for me. It's not impossible, but if I meditate for 2 or 3 hours, I can totally get myself into a feminine point of view. But I don't always have 2 or 3 hours every single day that I can do that when I'm wrapped up at work. Usually when I wrap up, it's around 6 o'clock. Rachel will be cooking dinner. Pierre will be scratching at my door, our Frenchie, and so like, I don't want to wait 2 or 3 hours to feel like I'm in that play mode. So cannabis, taking 1 or 2 hits of cannabis can get me right there. And then I can work from that energy. And so for me, I understand in my life that my most valuable resource is time. like all of our lives, right? We live in this dream world where everything is finite. And so this ability for me to hack time and speed up the sequence of time and get myself into a state that I want to be in quicker is something that I feel is very beneficial in my life. Do I do it every day? Absolutely not. I want to make sure I still have that muscle there even without cannabis. But, once you can get there without it, why wouldn't you take something that can speed up that amount of time? For me personally, that's my view on it. Not everyone has that same type of view, but there'll be a time in my life where, maybe I sell a business or things are different. But right now I'm really charged up and excited to just go power every day into business. And so as a result of that, I go really high on my masculine. It can be a little challenging to find that balance point thereafter. So cannabis helps me switch the pendulum all the way back and then find my middle ground right in the center. So it allows me to show up as not only a business owner, but also a really good boyfriend, a good daddy to Pierre, and just a good friend overall. So yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, brother. No, I really appreciate that insight. I've always said that cannabis, it feels like cannabis helps me connect deeper to myself,
Yeah.
and it's one of the things I really resonated with your story was you were describing that back in high school, your sort of introduction to cannabis and how your relationship started with it was you were in a bad place, with your mental health and anxiety, and medications weren't working, and you were starting to feel despair, if you will. And then, the introduction of cannabis, you found that in this funny way, it actually helped with your anxiety. Whereas, some people, it heightens their anxiety. And whenever you said this, I kind of fell in love with you because it was like my story was almost the exact same of really just kind of felt this despair, and a lot of things that I've tried didn't work. And then when I found cannabis, it was like, oh, like here's something that actually seems to help with my anxiety. And I've gone through a long sort of complex relationship with cannabis, but I remember in those early stages, at first, there was definitely this sort of like back and forth between, there was the recreational use of it, like the sort of bonding with friends, doing it with friends. Everything felt better when we were on cannabis, anything that we did. But I found myself right around 16 years old, like making it a point to go out and consume large amounts of cannabis by myself in the woods and go on hikes. And I started doing this very regularly. And I didn't have I think like the self-awareness and the ability to articulate at that time what exactly it was that I was like doing. And I really wasn't even like conscious of the fact that I was like developing this sort of ritualistic thing and relationship with this plant and this spirit. I truly like was just doing this, right? And like in hindsight, I see it and it's like, oh, like there was something in those experiences that I truly appreciated it. And it was this combination of kind of like you said, like both dissociation, but also like sometimes massive association. You know what I'm saying? He said sometimes reassociation with things. And yeah, man, I say all that because just to give like the audience and stuff more context, could you like kind of give them, your story and just a little bit of your background, what led you into, you're somebody who has decided you're going to utilize your life force for this sort of thing. So yeah, well, what made you want to do that?
Yeah, dude, great question, man. And, I love this question because, it allows me to, kind of revisit my own story and really look into my own life in a way that allows me to see that some part of me, you want to call it the higher self, right? Which is a really funny pun considering what I do. God has a big sense of humor, but, the higher self always knew. But at the same time, the small self, the ego, had no fucking idea what was happening. Still doesn't know any idea what's happening, right? Is honestly confused as hell every single day when I wake up in this reality, right? The fact that I went from being a 16-year-old who, like you were, alluding to, I think when we're teenagers, there's a lot of things that just happen to shift, right? Hormones shift, a lot of things shift. Also, considering how we're brought up in the world, like you were mentioning, like you and your friends, right? Especially in high school, really loving cannabis. Why is that? Personally, for me, the reason why I feel so many teenagers really enjoy cannabis is because we're just coming out of childhood where play was our natural state. We didn't have a lot of responsibilities. And now we're getting into, it's almost too fast of a polarity shift from like, maybe I'll get my homework done. Maybe I won't, to like, hey, you better know what you want to do the rest of your life, because in 2 years, you're going to need to take out a $100,000 loan potentially, go to college, do all this stuff that probably you don't really want to do. Most kids honestly don't want to do what they're going to college for. They just feel it's the safe bet. Their parents told them, hey, go for this. It'll be healthy for you. I don't think anyone really wants to wake up as a worker bee. But again, we don't really have a lot of language for that when we're growing up. You know, we just see the adults doing it around us. It's what is considered normal. You know, even for me, I was a conspiracy theorist when I was a kid, but you can only dive so deep by the time you're 16, 17. So anyway, when I was 16, I started feeling a lot of this pressure, right? This pressure to perform, this pressure to produce, this pressure to go get a job that I didn't want to do and do all these things that just didn't feel in alignment with me. So naturally, what started happening was my body started giving me a response that something was out of alignment. And that response was anxiety, right? This panicked feeling, this feeling of feeling out of control. And I didn't know what this was. So I go to the doctor, the guy in the white lab coat who I had learned to trust about anything going wrong with me. So I go there and he diagnoses me after 5 minutes of meeting with me with generalized anxiety disorder. And he starts recommending medications. And, you know, at that point, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Oh, my God, I must just have a Zoloft, deficiency. I must just have a Prozac deficiency. I must just have a, insert blank here, lorazepam, whatever the hell it is. They tried putting me on so many different things, and I would try them, and it would make me feel like a fucking zombie, dude, And up until this point, I had only drank a couple of times, silly stuff you do with friends. I had smoked some cigarettes, but I had never tried cannabis. Well, technically when I was 14, I got peer pressured. Not really. I can explain it if you want to, but I was trying to, feel cool in front of a girl. So Bill Clinton did. I didn't inhale. So I didn't get any high from it. I hit it out of a ghetto bong. But when I was 16, I, was talking to a friend about this one day, and he was like, dude, I use cannabis for that. And again, as a 16-year-old, I'm not sure what language we use, but he ended up convincing me after a while. I was like, what do I got to lose right here? I'm already trying these medications. I'm feeling more and more hopeless and, full of despair every time I get promised this one's going to be the one that works, and it doesn't work. It just feels like even worse than the last one. So I ended up trying it. And the first 2 times that I tried it, I wasn't really sure what I was looking for. I wasn't really sure what the effect was going to be. So I was kind of like trial and erroring it. The third time, though, as they say, is the charm. And it definitely was for me. I had a full-on out-of-body, blackout type experience. It wasn't scary at all. It was just very new for me. And what ended up happening was, in that experience, I got to see myself, but I got to look at myself from a different point of view. And I got to see that I didn't have anxiety. I was just experiencing a sensation that I had been called to call anxiety, right? I had been taught to call anxiety. And so after that experience, I didn't know what to make of that. I had no information of what to do with that. I had no context for what the hell I had just experienced, but it shifted something radically in me where it just wasn't that big of a deal anymore. The feelings of anxiety, right? They would still be there, but I kind of made peace with them because I realized they weren't me, I thought it was a me issue. And I was like, oh no, this is just something that's natural that's occurring, that for some reason society has been trained to call a certain thing that is this horrible thing. And so after that, I made the quote unquote mistake, like many people do, of thinking, well, if I feel like shit usually, and that thing out there, cannabis, just made me feel better, I must need more and more of that all the time. Because I was still in the same mindset of someone who goes to the doctor and has them fix your issue for you. I didn't realize that I had kind of fixed my own issue, and cannabis had been the magnifying glass that was necessary for me to be able to see myself in that way. I thought the plant really healed me. And so at the end of the day, what ended up happening was I ended up consuming more and more cannabis, right? Just like yourself, you were talking about with friends and things like that, and getting way deeper into music and so many amazing things. But when I was 18, I had my first mortality crisis where I woke up one day, started peeing blood, had no idea why. So I go to the hospital. My dad on the way is like, are you doing drugs? I'm like, no, but I am connecting with a lot of cannabis. And so I saw him have a sigh out of the corner of my eye, like a sigh of relief, right? And I thought that was very interesting considering my dad was a just say no type guy. So when we go to the hospital, I had shown him a lot of the research I had been doing around cannabis because I was petrified around drugs. I was a, just say no, dare education kid, totally bought into all the propaganda. So when I started liking this, I wanted to make sure I wasn't just falling into an addiction and just going to kill myself or something, right? So I had done a lot of research and started realizing that cannabis had been curing cancer for people and all this crazy shit. So I started to become very bullish, to use a crypto term, on cannabis. And so my dad watches these videos with me. One of them that really touched him was one called Leaf from Dr. William Courtney, in which he meets this patient who has like 11 autoimmune disorders. And over the course of, I think, 12 to 18 months, he has her start juicing raw cannabis and raw cannabis leaves. So the important thing to say here is there's no intoxicating aspects to juicing cannabis and cannabis leaves, right? So a lot of people think in order to experience the medicine, you have to get high. You don't, right? So after about 12 to 18 months, he had put all 11 of her autoimmune disorders into remission. And then at the end, they get married and now they do this work together. So a really cute story. It's like 15 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube still. So my dad was like, wow, I guess I didn't know what I didn't know. If this is helping you and you're in school, you have a job, you're fulfilling your responsibilities, you're an adult. Who am I to tell you you can't do something at this point in your life? So it became a kind of bonding point around my dad and I. You know, he didn't consume cannabis, but he was just really always interested in what I was interested in. So at that time, I had started going to school for psychology because I was fascinated with the mind. But I was starting to feel a little weird about it because, you know, I've never been a red tape guy. I've never been a rules guy. And I've definitely never been a khakis with a tight belt type guy. And so when I started going, yeah, dude, when I started going to the school, I started looking around and going, yeah, I'm just getting trained to be a worker bee here. You know, the biggest thing for me right at the bat, and this is the problem with doing psychedelics and going to college or any mainstream anything, is, you know, I pay, let's say, $60,000 to become a psychologist. I just left 12 years of general education where the whole myth is that you're in school to kind of, you know, learn a lot of different things. So when you go to college, you can specialize in something. My first 2 years of college, I'm doing general electives again. I'm like, why? This would cost me half as much to get my degree. I can get it in 2 years. But, oh, that's just the way it goes. That's just the rules, right? I'm like, well, who wrote the rules? Can we go talk to them? Like, what's going on here? So I started having a lot of issues with school. And, you know, I always knew how to, you know, finagle my way into passing and things like that. But anyway, a couple of years in, I go to the Boston Freedom Rally to go celebrate, you know, let's legalize cannabis like I did every year. And I get out of the subway tunnel and I hear a guy yelling, who wants to make butter with me? So I go over to his little tiny tent that he has set up, his little canopy. And he's passing out these pamphlets for a new cannabis school opening up about 5 minutes from where I was living at that time. So this was one of the first times, Gabe, that I felt like a fuck yes from my heart. I go home, I tell my dad, I'm like, can you help me out? Because I'm a broke college student. It was like $500. So he offers to not only pay for my tuition, but he's like, hey, I'll go with you. It's cheap enough. I want to go too. So right before this, I had finally convinced my dad to buy me a grow kit. And we had tried growing, and our first harvest was absolutely terrible, dude. It was absolutely god awful. Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And so, you know, my dad saw a good investment opportunity. He's like, hey, you know, like, I don't know if there's ever going to be an industry or anything like that, but my son's interested in something. This will give him the things he definitely needs to be able to be better at what he's doing. So we go together, and right from the first day I walked into the door, I was like, Dad, this is what I want to do. And he was like, all right, if this is what you want to do, be the first one in and last one out, be the teacher's pet, like really show them that you're down with this. So I ended up doing that. I ended up interning for the school. Then I ended up working for the school. And a lot of the work I was doing there was supporting the founders of the school in helping cancer patients and other sick patients with cannabis. So I got to see with my own two eyes, patients coming in with their scans showing tumors, stage 3, stage 4, innumerable different types of cancer. You know, Mike and Melissa, the owners of the school, giving them RSO, you know, putting them on a holistic health protocol because they had a holistic health advocate and coach on hand there too. So that's when I started learning about apple cider vinegar and sprouts and all these different things, bentonite clay and all this stuff. And so I would witness these people coming back in 3, 6, 12 months later with no tumors on their scans. And I live in Boston. Dana-Farber is one of the best cancer institutes in the country, supposedly, right? And they were flabbergasted. They had no idea what was going on. The patients would tell them, yeah, I'm using cannabis. They tell them exactly how they were doing it, and they just didn't believe it at all. They're like, no way, right? Well, nowadays, you can go on PubMed and actually look up studies they've done with mice where THC is killing cancer cells, CBD is inhibiting the cancer cell growth. Who knows what the rest of the cannabinoids and terpenes are doing? The research is still super infantile. But at the same time, you know, after I start going there, I end up, deciding to go to a music festival, right? We were just talking about the festival you went to. And so I had really gotten into rave culture and whatnot. And, you know, of course, and, you know, rave culture is big in psychedelics. And at this point, I had never done anything else except just cannabis. And I had tried alcohol before, but that was it, and tobacco. And so I start going to clubs and I'm seeing a lot of people eat crystals off people's fingers and stuff. And I'm like, that doesn't really look like how I want to get into this, right? So for many years, I just don't do anything with it. Well, in 2014, my two best friends that I always went to every show with and me were going out to Vegas. My one friend had met a girl recently and they started dating. And that girl did Molly with her friends and her family. And so we decided, we're like, all right, we're going to Vegas. Let's do it, right? So I did a lot of research, realized that MDMA was a heart opener. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I guess I'll figure that out. And boy, did I. So we're in the middle of the crowd and it hits us. And the first time is always super special. And I'm having a blast. I'm like barely even conscious. You're just, it's like being a kid again, like you just don't even, like, time flies by. So at one moment, I'm just like, the bass is hitting me. I'm like sweating. I feel great. And all of a sudden I just get centered into this feeling around my dad. I have no idea why. And I just feel like this, like almost pain, like I miss him. And so my logical brain kicks in. It's like, well, you're in Vegas. Your dad likes gambling. You're going to steakhouses with your friends. Your dad likes steakhouses. You go with them. You go to them with him all the time. So I'm like, my logical brain just read it off. But when I got home 9 days later, I realized my dad had just informed me that he got diagnosed with terminal cancer when I was out in Vegas. He had been having a lot of like lung issues and things like that. He was a 3-pack-a-day smoker, drank Coca-Cola, the whole thing, right? And so I didn't know how to handle that when he told me. My dad still looked like the same dad I had my whole life. He didn't look sick or anything. He wasn't coughing. He didn't seem any different. But now all of a sudden, there's a due date, essentially, right? A termination date. And he didn't tell me. He got diagnosed July 9th, but he was only given until October. He didn't give me that information. It was small cell carcinoma, so very aggressive. So, he elected not to take treatment, chemo or radiation or anything. And so after about, probably, I don't know, a month or so, he started experiencing some pretty severe pain. And so I convinced him. I was like, Dad, I know you're big on control. You don't like to be intoxicated, but let's take some of this medicine we're growing together, because we were growing together at that point still. Let's turn it into RSO and let's just, be able to give you this. And so he was like, okay, finally, he was like, okay, I'll do it. So I started administering this to him. And when I would give him it, I would sit with him in the living room and just kind of like, I thought I would just help him to the bathroom and things like that. But when I actually did is when I discovered the true power in everything I teach now around cannabis. Now, I just got a glimpse of it there. It's opened up a lot more since then. But here I am sitting with my dad. I'm an only child, right? I do have a half brother and half sister, but I grew up in the household as an only child. My dad and I did everything together. I thought I knew this guy, right? I knew him inside and out. Well, all of a sudden this medicine hits him and we're sitting there and I start to hear so much more about stories I've never heard about before. I get to witness him be vulnerable. I get to witness him open up and I get to see a lot more of his divinity come out of him. We start talking about things like death and we start, it wasn't even heavy, right? He was just talking about, what do you think happens when you die? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, I don't know either. I'm like, are you excited? He's like, kinda, right? And so this really like intimate conversation that we had, we have many of them, but during that time, I got to watch him be vulnerable enough to have closure with his grandchildren, with his other children, with me, my mother, and most importantly, himself and his own mortality. And over the course of the next 10 months, my dad got to pass it home just like he wanted. He got to keep his hair because he had a bitchin' set of hair, right? That's where I get it from. And he got to keep his dignity. And he also got 10 extra months with us. And I got 10 extra months with him. He ended up lasting all the way till the following June. So almost 9 months past his termination date. And I don't know if I would have had that time had it not been for cannabis. I can't go back and try it another way. But after that, I was like, whatever I just experienced was way different than Cheech and Chong and how high can you get and gravity bonks, like way different. So after that, a real big fire had been lit under my ass. And at this point, I was 4 or 5 years into really diving into holistic health, fitness, and everything too. So I ended up working at a dispensary near my house for 5 years with over 5,000 medical patients. And what I started doing was, just because I love supporting people, I love teaching, I love educating. I wasn't a coach at that point or anything. I had completed my degree in psychology, but kind of just put it on the back burner. So people would come in and I'd start to form relationships with them over time, right? But there was only like 3 or 4 dispensaries open in the entire state at that point. So we got a lot of people in there. And people would come in, they'd buy a certain strain for weeks on end, and they'd come in and say, oh, cannabis isn't working for me anymore. And so I'd get curious, right? And I'm like, oh, well, what are you doing for water? What's your diet like? Are you sleeping well? How's your, how are your relationships in your life? You going through stress right now? And I would just start asking them questions. And so I would start consulting with them on, how to get their sleep better and things like that. They'd come in and say, hey, dude, cannabis is working better for me now. I'm like, oh, cool. Didn't really connect it at that point. So then I kept getting told, oh, you should start a podcast. You should do this. I'm like, oh, no. But in 2019, a corporation, right, my, Achilles heel in life, took over the dispensary we were working at. And so all of a sudden it started smelling like khakis and office supplies in there real quick. And I was like, I got to eject Cito out of here. And I'm very grateful. At the time I played the victim card hard. I was like, why did this company come in and fuck everything up? But honestly, in hindsight, I am extremely grateful for them because I have a pattern of staying in things too long. And unless something gets to critical mass, I will just be like, nope, I can just grin and bear it. I'll martyr myself in a way. And so if they hadn't fucked everything up and made every decision horrible, then it might not have motivated me enough to actually like have the courage to go out and start my own business, not knowing anything about business and everything like that. And so that's really how I got started in all of this, man. In 2019, I started my first podcast, the Highly Optimized Podcast. Still had no idea that I was going to do what I'm doing now. I thought I'd mix cannabis and holistic health together in some way. I started a YouTube channel and I started getting into coaching. And once I got into coaching, I started meeting all new people. I started going to different places. This is right when the pandemic bullshit happened as well, which was amazing. Flights were super cheap. So I was able to fly all over the country and in Mexico and all these places, meet all these people and start learning from them, right? Start, allowing the 5 people I spend the most time with to change my reality. And that's when I started meeting Paul Chek. And I already told you a little bit about the Aubrey connection. And life has just exploded since then. So what I want to articulate in this story is that I followed the fun. I followed where my heart was going. And to bring it all the way back to what you were talking about with your friends and thinking everything's better with cannabis and whatnot, I think what cannabis really does for us is allow the subconscious to open up and allow some of our programs and patterns to dissolve for a little while and allow us to feel more resonant to what we know we're supposed to feel like. But the thing is, we live in a world that is so do the safe bet, logic, that a lot of us don't learn that we can say, no, I'm going to follow my heart and I'm going to take risks and I'm going to have the courage to do so. And I'm going to build myself into what I call a highly optimized individual. So I can really take the time to open up what my unique magic is and then find avenues to bring that unique magic to the world, find other people doing the same thing that we can all do it together during. And I think that the more of us that find that, the more that we will naturally not need things like, cannabis or any of these things, because they're just reminders, right? They're reminders. And a lot of people utilize them unconsciously because they're looking for that self-love. They just don't know how to do it because they're listening to too many other people that are like, oh, you can't be an artist, man. You're not going to make any money. Go to school for architecture, okay? And then it's like, okay, I'll go to school for architecture. And then you end up like hating your life and you end up needing to numb out more and more often to stop you from feeling like something is off here, right? Not to mention relationship, dynamics. People are married to the wrong person or not in love with the person they're with anymore, don't want to break their heart. All of these things are the things we're never taught in school that ultimately, as I've worked with more and more clients, these are the reasons people get, quote unquote, addicted to cannabis. That's why I tell everyone, you're not addicted to cannabis. You're addicted to escaping the discomfort that you don't want to look at. And if we start looking into there, you will naturally just stop using cannabis or nicotine or whatever it is as much as you are, because it's not the thing. The cannabis or the nicotine or the alcohol or the pornography or the bad food is not the problem. It's just the sign that there is a problem. It's you're kind of like, hey, something's going on here. But if you focus all your attention on the effect, you don't ever really discover the cause. And, a big part of life, and maybe what we'll get into, and I'll stop my monologue in a second here, but I'm on a good flow here. It's like a big part of life is shifting your whole reality from being the effect to being the cause, right? AKA going from the victim to the creator, going from the dream to the real reality. That's really what we're doing here. And that's what these medicines are here to remind us of. But most of us are using them without a user manual, right? We're just like hopping imagine if we never saw our car before and we're just hopping in and hitting buttons. And sometimes we smash into a wall. Sometimes we might get to our destination. We might get there late, whatever. We don't really know how to use this metaphorical car yet. So we've all been winging it at best. And what I've sought to do is create that long lost user manual for cannabis. And that's what we do in the Conscious Cannabis Collective, the mastermind, and all the courses and everything like that. So it's been amazing, man. It's really fun to reflect on that.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing. You got a really admirable story. I love your story. One of the things I heard this past weekend, I was in conversation with somebody and we were talking about anger, and they threw this quote. I don't know who said this quote. I think it was somebody really prominent, famous, but it's an old quote, and it goes something like, one day eventually you'll realize that you were never really angry in the first place, right? And it's this kind of idea that when you think about it, and children are very emblematic of this, like an angry child, a child who's acting out. It's truly not because like they're probably actually angry. There's this like kind of confusion, right? And this energy that they don't know how to transmute. And whenever you were speaking about the sort of trap that you feel like teenagers get into with cannabis, I really appreciated that insight, because I think that a lot of people could benefit from hearing that. And it reminded me a lot of this sort of conversation that I had this past weekend, that feeling of anxiety. It's, maybe it's not actually anxiety, right? Maybe it's confused. Maybe it's a certain type of energy that is valid, and that you haven't been given the tools of, how to transmute, right?
Yeah.
And there's this other thing that you were describing of sort of like this white lab coat syndrome,
Yeah.
right? And it's really funny to me because, we see a lot of people go through this in the traditional sense with Western medicine, kind of like how you were describing. I went to a doctor, trying a bunch of different medications, fix me, you're the professional, right? All these things, kind of disempowering the self in our own sort of innate healing ability. But I also have seen this quite a bit in the cannabis space. And that's why I appreciate somebody like you so much, is because even within something like cannabis, there's a massive amount of this hypocrisy of, hey, we're getting away from the white lab coats, but okay, hey, you just need the 30% strain this week. Let me tell you whether or not it's sativa or indica, the bro science that you get at some of the dispensaries, not this really truly holistic mind, body, spirit connection that you have to a plant. And so I guess where I would like to kind of take this conversation now, if we can, is maybe give us a kind of crash course on how do you suggest people use cannabis consciously? And then I feel like from there's probably quite a bit that we can unpack. But
Oh yeah, dude. And I'll share one thing based on what came up when you were talking about teenagers and things like that. If you look at children, for the most part, again, there's always going to be outliers, but for the most part, kids have it figured out. They're not running around searching for healing, rummaging, right? They're having fun. If you buy them a new toy, right, and they're below 6 years old, let's say, right, because at some point the ego does get formed. But if they're below 6 years old and you buy them a new toy, they don't have any feeling of like, they might play with the new toy a little bit and go back to an old one. They're not thinking like, oh, is Gabe going to be upset if I go to the old toy? He's going to think I don't like the new toy. Like, all of that happens after you're 6 years old. So like when you look at a kid, they are naturally just following fun. And then let's say something happens, right? They want a candy bar, they don't get it. Well, they will naturally have an emotion come up. And if the parents are smart enough, they will just allow that child to have that emotional response. Maybe they'll sit next to them and hold space, right? And even if that kid doesn't get the candy bar, eventually he or she is cried out and they go back to their innate state of being, which is joy. And I think that what happens is as we start to get older, when we're younger, we look at adults like, wow, you guys have it all figured out. And I know as a kid, I really believed that. I looked at my parents, and I'm like, you guys got it all figured out. I worshiped the ground they walked on. And I think that for a lot of us, it's a big smack in the face when we start to get older and the answers stop being like, curiosity provoking. Like, I don't know why the sky's blue. Why don't you draw it with chalk and see what happens, right? It starts to become less of that and more like, this is just the way things are done. Just get to fucking school, all right? Like, you can't stay home again. No, you have to do those stupid classes. I don't care if you don't like them. And we start to get really frustrated and angry because we all know deep down, this isn't what life is supposed to be. We're not supposed to be raised like worker bees and have to do a bunch of things we don't want to do. Like, yes, in business, for instance, right? Do I love making copy for emails? It's not my favorite thing, but do I love connecting with people? Yeah. So I can contextualize that thing that I don't really like to do within the grand scheme of what I love to do. And that makes it fun for me. And it also makes it like a cool challenge. When I'm in history class, learning completely inaccurate American history, and I'm trying to think about what the fuck this means or why I'm learning this, and they're just like, because you have to, that doesn't feel good. And so the more of that happens and the farther and deeper you get into that, why am I writing this 5-page paper? Because you have to. There's no other reason, right? Why do we have to read this book? Because the last class did and the next class is going to have to, so you have to too. I think over time, we start to get really fucking angry. And then as we start to get old enough where we start to be able to go, I think I can sneak a cigarette behind my parents' back. I think I can sneak a beer. Of course, we're going to find ways to find relief from all of that because it's a lot of fucking pressure to live in a world that is completely ass backwards and know deep down in our core that it's ass backwards, but not have any context from the adults around us because everyone's just following the fucking system, right? And maybe you have parents that are different, you know, like luckily my parents were a little bit, you know, on the fringes, so it helped out a lot. But at the end of the day, it's no wonder why, especially now when we can't even figure out what fucking gender we are and shit, why so many people are having challenges, right? Because there are things in life that must be understood in order for someone to have a foundation from which they can build whatever skyscraper they want to build on. And when you can't have that kind of mapping of reality, it really starts to fuck with the mental state. So now bringing it up to conscious cannabis, right? A lot of people, you know, are waking up in their late 20s, early 30s now, even some early 20s people that I talk to that are realizing, I don't want my life to look like this. You know, they might not see the problem for what it is yet, but they just know something is off. And so what I always tell everyone, right, for anyone listening to this that is feeling a resonance, you know, even if maybe you're like, I don't know if I'm using too much cannabis, but I'm open to this idea, right? And again, like too much is subjective, right? Like I've met people that smoke all day, every day that have a really healthy relationship with cannabis. I've met people that smoke once a week that just do it to numb out and fucking forget their life. And that's unhealthy. And so at the end of the day, I don't want people to get stuck in what the logical mind's going to tell you. Ryan says he takes 3 days off every week, so I have to do that too, right? It's not about that. That's just the system I found works for me as an individual. So when it becomes, you know, you looking to get more into a conscious relationship with cannabis, what I always recommend is to first figure out where you're at now, right? Because you need context from where you're starting to know where you want to go. So one of the best things you can do is, for anyone listening, for the next week, don't try to cut back. Don't try to shift anything. The only thing you're going to do is before each time you light up, you're going to be radically honest with yourself. That's the only way this works. And you're going to ask yourself, why? Why am I choosing to alter my state right now? And you're going to keep a log, whether it's in your phone, notebook, whatever, of what your answers are. And if you do this and you are radically honest, you are going to see some themes start emerging over the course of 5 to 7 days. You're going to start noticing a lot of things like, I don't like the job I'm at, and it feels good to smoke when I'm home and forget about it. It feels like I can't really speak my truth. Maybe I have patterns of people pleasing, and I don't know why, but it just seems like when at the end of the day, I'm just like, oh, thank fucking God. Let me just fucking numb out and forget all these things, because maybe you're saying yes to a lot of things that you don't want to say yes to, but it feels weird to say no, whatever it is, right? You're going to start seeing that theme emerge. Then from there, you can start actually figuring out what you want to do about this, right? So once you start figuring out, you know, the main themes, you want to go 7 levels deep there. So let's say, for instance, or for example, you start figuring out it's because the job that you're working at just doesn't fulfill you, and you just hate going there every day. It's just like killing your soul to go to that job every day. And so you notice that like 75% of the time that you connect with cannabis, the reason is, I just want some happiness in my life because this fucking job is weighing me down. So now you've identified a main theme in your life. There's something around this job that is not going accurate or proper in your life. Now you want to go 7 levels deep, right? So maybe your reason is, I don't like my job. Why? Well, because it's not something I love. Why? Well, because I've never been passionate around math and science. Why? Well, because math and science just make me bored. Why? You know, like you get 7 levels deep, and at the root of that will probably be some amalgamation of, I don't feel like I can, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable. One of these core wounds that we talk about, almost everyone I've ever worked with has one of those 4. And so at the end of the day, from there, what you want to start doing is now, after those like 2 weeks, right, of kind of figuring out what your reasoning is and then going 7 levels deep on that why or that theme, now you want to actually start a new pattern with cannabis, where now what you're going to do is you could still connect every day if you want to, whatever. You don't have to change the frequency if you don't want to, not yet anyway. But now what you want to do is you want to specifically set intentions to go into that discomfort. So for a lot of people, they probably haven't been using intention of any sort. But again, you know, our unconscious is kind of what dictates our reality, right? Like 90 to 95% of our life is dictated on our unconscious. That's why you can say, I want to stop smoking cannabis. And the next day you're like, holy shit, why am I smoking a joint again? I just said I wanted to quit yesterday, right? It's because the conscious mind is only 5% of what our reality actually is. And so what you want to do is you want to now train yourself to, instead of escaping with cannabis, because if you come home and you're like, oh, this day sucked, and you light up a joint, guarantee your unconscious is telling cannabis, I don't want to feel shit. I just want to completely numb out. So now you have to become conscious with your intention, and you have to tell cannabis, I want to go directly into that feeling I've been trying to escape. And I want you to also, at this point, start shifting what you do. You're not going to be watching a YouTube video when you do it. You're going to be doing breath work or meditating or being still. Because again, the way this medicine works is if you distract yourself, right, and you're focusing all your effort and everything out there, you're not going to be able to feel what's in here. Cannabis, unless you really overdose it, is pretty subtle, you know, especially if you've been a daily user for a long time. It's very different than the people I work with that have never consumed cannabis and now are starting from this point. You know, for them, it can be a psychedelic experience of one hit. For most of us, we have to kind of train ourselves to see cannabis in this different way and start, experiencing it in a different way. And one of the things that cannabis does more than any other plant medicine I've ever worked with, in my opinion, is it connects me directly with the Holy Spirit or the higher self. And to me, those two terms are interchangeable. But the difference is with other medicines, you will hear that voice, but you're so far out that it's hard to remember what it said when you come back down. With cannabis, you can get the idea and then immediately write it down, right? Or go on Amazon and buy the thing that it just told you to buy or whatever it is, right? So it's, again, it connects you to the human experience. You're still very human while you're having this psychedelic experience. And so that's what I would say the basics are, right? Going from unconscious, non-intentional use to conscious, intentional use through the idea of realizing you're not addicted to cannabis, but you are addicted to something. So you got to figure out what you're addicted to. And in this example I laid out, you're addicted to getting away from discomfort of not thinking you have the courage or ability to change your life situation of the job you're in. Once you get clear on that, you start actually being able to assimilate and integrate that energy that's been stuck in you through consciously creating intentions to go directly into that which you fear to an experience, right? Once you start going into that and dissipating that energy, you'll start creating space within. And in order to have the Holy Spirit and higher self speak through you, it can't speak through you if you're just constantly filled up and there's no space for it. So we have to first get clear on what you're addicted to, then start to actually relieve you from that feeling to create the necessary space from which the higher self and Holy Spirit can start to allow you to have more right-minded thinking and start to give you little clues of like an example would be like, say if you have a creative block, right? And you go into a ceremony, you're like, cannabis, I just used to feel way more creative and I feel like I just suck at being creative now, right? Maybe that's your limiting belief. So you go into the experience and you start to sit into it and you start to experience these uncomfortable feelings and you're like, oh God, this is rough. Yeah, I really feel it. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. All of a sudden you get this ping and it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Oh my God, I could totally start painting again. I used to love painting. Why did I stop painting, right? That's the holy instant. That's when you merge with the Holy Spirit of the higher self. Boom, that's your idea. Now, what most people do is they go, oh, really cool. Then they come out of the experience and they don't change anything in their life. And they end up forming a belief that I need more cannabis to feel creative. Every time I'm with cannabis and smoking cannabis, I feel creative. No, it's that cannabis is allowing your ego to get out of the way enough for the Holy Spirit to come in and remind you of what you need to go do to make yourself feel, in this case, more creative. So in the conscious example, what you would do there is you would go, well, what could I do here? And while you're still in the ceremony, you could go on Amazon, buy a paint kit, look on Google for local art classes, sign up for a class and start integrating that and start following the thread that the spirit of cannabis has opened up for you by allowing you to connect to your higher self. So that's how working with every medicine, but especially cannabis, works. It'll give you a little bit, then you got to go do it, right? Because life is equal parts praying and moving your feet. And what I see most people doing in the spiritual space is they manifest all the time. They're always visualizing. They're always doing whatever, but they forget the moving your feet part. Like you got to actually go out there and integrate this stuff and do something with it. So that's what I would say, from unconscious, unintentional use all the way up to conscious, intentional use.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I had heard this sort of framework, like I had mentioned earlier, when I had first heard about you on Aubrey Marcus, the podcast you did with him, and then the podcast you did with Paul Check. And I actually put these things to practice, and I'd like to unpack that a bit with you here. And just to give you a little bit more context, I'm so happy I get to talk to you in this long
Dude,
form.
this is sick,
go over
bro.
this with you. But yes, this was about a year or two, year and a half ago. I was stuck in this place in life where I was really unhappy, working at a job that I did not like. I hated it. It was very much khakis, corporate.
Yeah.
Dude, it was not me, you know. And I was miserable, and I was consuming a lot of cannabis, and I was also taking a lot of psychedelics. It's something I had been doing since I was pretty young. Um, and I had gotten some insights and some like whispers, if you will, of shake shit up. You know what I'm saying? Like you're not. This isn't who you are. You're not happy. And then I had this DMT experience where I received a pretty gnarly hyper slap. If I don't know if you've heard of this phenomenon, but it was a very uh, rough and learning experience within the DMT. And what I faced was this demonic sort of being who uh, said weed and then like hit me with these brain zaps. It was extremely scary, confusing, kind of all the things. And what I pulled away from that experience was this really like radical shift in my like relationship with cannabis. And like it was very evident to me that this was something I needed to radically look at this moment in my life, because DMT had always been very loving, and even times when it had been rough with me, it had been like rough with a loving touch. This time it was like, hey, no, bitch, like we've been giving you the whispers, now we're gonna scream at you. You know what I'm saying? And so I took several months off of cannabis, like pretty much starting that day. I remember walking home, or walking all the way back to my car, and then driving home. I was just like, nope. Like it was like this shell shock, I stopped cold turkey that day, and spent several months sober. And it was within that time that I had heard first your podcast with Aubrey, and then your podcast with Paul Check, and your sort of framework here. And so I started to put it into practice. And at the time that I started to put it into practice, I wasn't even consuming cannabis every day, but I started to ask myself, like, why is it that I still want to consume cannabis every day? Because I was several weeks past like physical withdrawals. You know what I'm saying? I was sleeping fine, like, my appetite came back, but I still had this desire, this burning desire every single day that I wanted to consume cannabis, almost to the point where it was like, probably like I just thought about it. It took up too much headspace. And so your framework really offered me this first of all sort of encouragement, and then this way to transmute that energy. And some of the themes that started popping up for me was, one, obviously that I was one of the things that I wrote down a lot when I asked myself, like, why do I want to consume cannabis right now, was at first it was like, I don't like my job, and then it was that kind of turned into like, I'm bored. There was a lot of that. It was like, I'm bored. And then that, once I dug deeper into that, as you're alluding, like, I'm bored, I don't like my job. Where is that coming from? Why am I sitting in that? The core of it was this like feeling of inadequacy and like almost imposter syndrome. And like, I can't build that life that I want to do. Like I have these crazy dreams. I've had these visions on dimethyltryptamine of who I can become and who I want to become. But there was this massive imposter syndrome that was underlying, that like truly I had to like face. And yeah, it was that sort of like period, man, of like digging into this, like really set a framework that whenever I return to cannabis, like since then, my relationship has been so much healthier. And, truly for me nowadays, it feels like it comes down, and I don't write it down every single time, but I do often ask myself, pretty much every time, like, well, why do I want to do this? And there's usually like a little bit of a prayer and this like kind of slight ritualization of the thing that's like unique to me, but it's my ritualization, but it comes down to two things for me, man. It comes down to spirit, like truly, like it feels like this connection to, kind of like I described earlier, to myself, but to my higher self, to God, right? And so it's usually this sort of like synergistic thing with either psychedelics and or meditation and or breath work, sometimes all three of those things,
Yes, dude.
But also the second, I would say, biggest theme is play. And this reminds me
something that started to come out towards the end of all of this, when I was writing and journaling this every day and I was still sober, I started to write down, it was like, I want to connect with my son. And then, like, I remember one time I was like, well, like, I do it, like, I'm a good dad. I do a good job of that. And so I wrote, like, I want to connect deeper with him. Like, you know, I was like, it's not that I need cannabis. I don't need to connect with him. I do that every day. But I was like, I know that I could connect with him in an even more special way with the cannabis, right? And so it was this period. And I remember during this time, I completely changed my life around, got rid of this job that I didn't like. I somehow found a way to carve out a career for myself where I could truly pursue the passions that I care about and utilize my life force for things that I think are important. Plus, you know, I earn more money for me and my family now, more resources, which is really important to me. And I get to spend more time with my child. I get to own my sort of schedule. All of these things I was able to bring to fruition. And truly, man, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, just listening to you for a few hours was a massive sort of like fundamental part of that. It was really important. And like, I've got to get emotional about it, but I love you. And I really recommend
I love you too, bro.
people follow this and really think about this. And yeah, dude, yeah, I'm just going to throw it back to you now.
Bro. I mean, first of all, thank you, man. Fully received, you know, and that feels so good for me to hear because, you know, the key word that you said there, I mean, you said a lot of amazing things, but, you know, the key word I want to pull out for everyone listening is you said somehow. I somehow was able, right? And that's the thing, right? Is that our ultimate mission here or our end of the bargain is the what and the why. God's job is the how and the when. And he does it, or it does it much better than we can. So when we stop thinking that we need to have all the answers and we start just following our heart, right? Again, we do have to move our feet, but at the end of the day, you will be so shocked at how things play out. Do you know how much I thought that Paul Check and I would end up really good friends and he would connect me to Aubrey? That never even entered my fucking reality, dude. I thought I'm just going to go out to Check's house. I'm going to meet some cool people. I'm going to get a really fun experience. I'm going to get to go hang out with a legend that I look up to so much. And I'm going to gift him something that like is just like, hey, this is what I do in the world. And I'd love to be able to give back in a way that, you know, is resonant with both of us. And out of that just love and that pure wanting to just support someone that had supported me so much, all of a sudden, all of this happens. So I promise to everyone listening, just like Gabe's talking about and just like I'm talking about, you know, hopefully I can be a pattern interrupt for anyone here, because at the end of the day, if I can make a career out of teaching conscious cannabis, when the world of cannabis, the industry, this isn't part of the industry, even when you go onto the psychedelic realms, right, in psychedelic communities, they don't look at cannabis like a psychedelic. So I'm literally in no man's land, basically, and I made this work. So if I can do that, there's no excuse for anyone listening on why you can't take whatever your heart desires and bring it to fruition. But the thing is, right, you may need to change up your environment. You may need to hang out with different people. You may need to actually start listening to what your heart's telling you, right? Keyword maybe, right? I'll put the soft talk in there on purpose. But at the end of the day, you know, we're not here to play it safe. We're not here to pay taxes to a bunch of land pirates and die, right? We're here to actualize. We're here to be that individual node that helps the entire collective wake up, not through following the rules and wearing our khakis and getting the expensive car and the expensive house and trying to keep up with the Joneses. That's all, to me, just more of what the system wants. What we're here to do is be that person that completely catalyzes someone's transformation. And I'll tell you how this happens, right? It's very similar to DMT. What you do, Gabe, what I do, what Paul Check does, we're all like walking DMT for someone. And I'll explain. This is not an ego thing, right? I'll explain it because when I was living in a very victim mindset, when I thought that I had to work for someone else to make my money, when I thought all these things were true, and then I found Paul Check, it was like a psychedelic experience for me, because here's someone who's doing something that was so much more resonant with my heart. Again, his mission is his mission, but it was like, oh my God, like you can do that, right? And so a lot of people just don't have context. Think about how many people are maybe in their hometown, you know, their parents are very like cookie cutter. Their friends all went to college and just got the safe bet. And now all of a sudden they listen to a podcast like this, and they've already known deep in their heart, they probably covered it over with a bunch of newspapers and whatnot, metaphorically, of why they can't have their dream life. And now they hear someone that's like, I double dog dare you to. If I did it, so can you. All of a sudden, that completely catalyzes a lot for them. It's either going to do one of two things. It's either going to make them want to numb out more because now it's starting to like birth out of them, or it's going to give them the motivation they need to go, fuck it, I'm going to sign up for that class. Fuck it, I'm going to go travel to that place. Screw it, I'm going to hit the person I like up and tell them that I want to take them on a date. Whatever it is, right? Like, this is what we all get to do for each other. And you know the best part about it, Gabe? You don't need to be a millionaire. You don't need to do anything. You could be selling hot dogs on the fucking beach. And as long as it's what you really want to do, everyone has that ability to change the course of someone's life just by how they smile at them, and just by how much they live their life on purpose and in their heart. You know, it's funny you talked about the podcast episodes like that because, you know, I'll tell you one funny thing. When I made my first course, Connect with Cannabis, and for anyone who's taken it, you know, you'll know accurate when I say this, like it is a gargantuan size course. Like we have 600 pages of science material alone in there, let alone probably another 600 in ceremony information. And everything's video and things like that. But we actually had a student print out the entire course one time, and it was like a thick three-ring binder. So, you know, imagine my surprise when I go so deep into all the ins and outs, and I have people like you reach out and they're like, hey, dude, I listened to a podcast that you were on, and it completely changed the course of my relationship with cannabis. Like, imagine how I felt. I'm like, what the fuck did I just build this entire course for, right? So, you know, my newer courses are now much simpler, you know, because I realized that I don't need to drown people in information. They already know, right? They're already resonating with it. There's already something waking up in them. I just need a little bit of course correction, and then to be able to lean into them on the calls, to be able to bring that out and allow them to be held accountable on what they're telling me that matters to them the most. Because here's the thing, right? It's the same thing as, you know, if you are, think about dementia, right? We think about dementia often as this like really challenging disease, right? And I've had, you know, my grandmother had dementia. It is very challenging. But in a way, we're all dealing with dementia. And I'll explain, right? We have these two polarities. We have the higher self, Holy Spirit, God, right? That spectrum. And we have the ego. And what happens is life is just a series of remembering and forgetting. Remembering we're God, forgetting we're God. Remembering we're God, forgetting we're God. When we remember we're God, anything is possible. Life works out for us. Life is simple. Doesn't mean easy, but it is simple. When we forget, right, and we get pulled back into what our friends are saying, what the news is saying, whatever, we essentially get dementia and we fall back into the ego, which is not real. The ego is not real. This all, you know, depending on what creation story you believe in, I like the one from A Course in Miracles, which is all about the fact that the son/daughter of God had a dream in which, what if there was something else than God? What if we weren't connected to God? And so God is unaware. God is still perfect oneness, right? Keyword perfect, right? Because perfect oneness and perfect love cannot have hate in it, cannot have any of this stuff, right? So many people on this planet are like, if God was real, why would he allow all this suffering down here? Well, because God didn't create the fucking universe, right? That was the son/daughter of God in our immaturity being like, what if there was something else? God already knows there's no reason to think that. But we then created a dream world in which this different being, the ego, which is a finite being, started to take on its own, like, you know, personality and life form. And so it's created this whole dream world where it looks like there's 8 billion separate selves, when in reality, it's one being playing out across infinite different probability of expression, right? Through animals, through you know, humans, through the planet itself, right? And so at the end of the day, you know, what the mission I really feel here is to do is to forgive the times that we fall into the traps of the ego. And every time we do that and we practice forgiveness, we get to side more with right-minded thinking that's coming from the Holy Spirit, higher self, which is what gets us home. When you look at Buddha, Jesus, any of these like deities, you know, and then you look at the religions that were made after them, it's hilarious because they were all practicing non-dualism, which is there's only oneness. There's no subject object, right? That's not real. That's not reality. Dualistic thinking is a expression of the ego. And so when you come down here and you start looking at all this and you start realizing all of this, what you start realizing is that at the end of the day, the more that we side with the Holy Spirit and the higher self, we get to essentially break the reincarnation loop, you know, and plant medicines like cannabis, psilocybin, etc. They give us glimpses, but it's almost like looking at the answers in the back of the book, right? Yeah, you might remember a couple, but you didn't really earn them, you know? And so they give you a glimpse to keep going, right? They allow you to realize you're not crazy, even though most of society will tell you that you are crazy for using psychedelics, because what does the ego want to do? It wants to survive. And it thinks that when you stop believing in it, it's going to die, because it's true. It will, right? And so at the end of the day, when you look at these non-dualistic teachings from Jesus and A Course in Miracles or old school Buddhism, and then you look at Buddhism or Christianity, what is it? It's people hundreds of years after these people pass away, because when they're alive, they're looked at as crazy. And after they pass away, someone who's coming from a dualistic point of view tries to make a religion, which none of these people ever wanted the religion, because religion would make this whole world more real and make it seem like there's rules we have to follow and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they turn them into dualistic teachings. And then we wonder why we're so fucked up as a society. It's because we all have dementia. We've all sided with this thing that's not really real. We all know it deep down, but we don't have anyone else around us for the most part. And these days, luckily, a lot more people are waking up to this, but we don't have any context for it. Our parents don't mention anything, whatever. So as kids, we remember, but we don't know we remember. We're just there. And then we slowly forget, and we don't know what we've forgotten until we start to get older. And maybe all of a sudden we have a blowout psychedelic experience and we're like, whoa, whatever that was feels like when I was a kid, but I don't know what the fuck that was. Then we start going to research and we start piecing this stuff together. But it's challenging, man, you know, because the powers that shouldn't be, they have all the distractions to pull us back into it. And so again, like, you know, the reason I'm mentioning all of this and, you know, I wanted to give context for this is because, you know, when people look at, am I addicted to cannabis? And these questions I get asked, I want them to think into this stuff. No, you're not addicted to cannabis. You're just living in a fucking disillusioned world. And it's not your fault that you're starting to realize that things are not as they seem. Like, that's actually a really good thing, but it's a very scary thing when you don't have anyone else around you that is aware of this or, you know, validating you or anything, or even worse, thinking you're crazy, putting you in a psych ward, any of these kind of things that happen to people that are waking up on this journey. So it's an interesting and fun world to be a part of. And what I want everyone to know is, you know, depending on how you view what I just said, oh my God, things are worse than ever. Oh my God, things are pretty good. Think of it this way. I choose to believe, and you can choose if you want to too, that we all came down here during this time for a very specific reason. Now, one may say that right now, living in the modern day world with all the distractions and things like that is like playing a video game on expert. And so let me ask you, do you, your higher self, the real you, do you think you would set yourself up for a mission you weren't ready for? Or is it time to start looking at who you are as a soul and start really celebrating wins of the fact that you chose to come down here and play the game on expert and you're not a victim of it, right? Life is not happening to you. It's happening by you. You are the one dreaming this dream. And just like lucid dreaming is a microcosm of what I'm talking about, you can wake up within the dream and control the dream. It's not that the dream doesn't matter, right? It's like that quote, nothing you do matters, but it's very important you do it. You know, the dream is important in the sense of waking up, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you're having the most fun fucking dream possible. And if you knew that you were an infinite being, would you still want to play it safe? Would you still prioritize money over your joy and happiness? Would you still leave songs unsung within you metaphorically, right? Or would you dare to be different? Would you find the courage to wake up all the magic within you and use that magic to light up the metaphorical lighthouse that you become when you do so, and help other people that are ready at this time to become their own lighthouse? Because at the end of the day, we're all the same being, but we're expressing differently. And the way that Gabe expresses may be a way that resonates with certain people that my lighthouse doesn't resonate with. And that's okay. That's by design. But the more of us that do this, the more people we can resonate with, and the faster this whole collective dream ends, and we get to be back in pure oneness where we still are, but we get to remember our divine nature as God living out this illusion, this dream world of being a human being. So it's really cool, man.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot that you said there, and I loved it. What kind of came up for me there, what you're talking about, is this idea and this notion, and this comes through in a lot of my experiences, and just, but it's this idea of it kind of like, you know, Earth is like being this like training school, if you will, for us, this like school thing for, you know, for the oneness, for our souls, you know.
Yeah.
And in the context of this entire conversation, I truly believe cannabis is one of the most powerful tools for like training your soul and your psyche within this like plane, you know, because it is this radical nexus point that I think it takes a bit of a ninja to sort of master that, because there's so like, when I say it's a nexus point, there's so many different possibilities of how your individual experiences can go and how those can help shape your life. And then when I think about some of like the classic serotonergic psychedelics, one thing that I've experienced is that, you know, in general, and I always have my own sort of sweet ritualistic, you know, thing around it, and I pay a lot of respect, but there is this sort of faith that I have within myself and those plant medicines that like, okay, I'm just going to be open to what it is like I need to experience. And usually there's this very sweet, divine guided like agenda. And that seems to kind of play out in almost every experience with serotonergic psychedelics. But it seems like to me, cannabis is much more malleable, you know, like it's, if I want it if I cultivate that sort of masculine energy within it, within that feminine energy that cannabis brings, you know, I can have those type of those experiences, the insightfulness, the play, all of those things. But also, if I want to use it to forget about how much I hate my job and stay stuck in that place, it's very malleable. I can do that as well too. And so, yeah, there's this. I really appreciate cannabis for that fact. I really appreciate your course for that fact. The Conscious Cannabis Collective.
Say that 3 times fast, dude. It's a mouthful.
Yeah. There's this really interesting sort of alchemization. And there's like a few people who I can point to who I've been like watching over several years who I really admire this about them. But there's a weird alchemization that to go sort of like to the top of the mountain, you know, and to come back down and to like remember what it was that you saw at the top, because you can't live at the top of the mountain, you know, but it's like you got to come back down. And so there's this a crazy alchemization of, you know, what some people call this integration and different things. But yeah, man, it takes a bit of a ninja, and I really appreciate the sort of I appreciate everything you do, dude. Yeah.
Oh, dude, thank you, man. I love this shit, dude. Like, you know, the reason that I can be consistent with this is only because I love it. Like, you know, and I think that's a really good sign for anyone listening, you know, that how do I know I'm on my purpose? What is my purpose? Well, you'll know because it fucking burns inside of you when you do it. Like, it's really fun for you. And like you were saying, one of the ultimate power zones of cannabis, because again, other plant medicines work this way too, but they're so overwhelming at times. Like you take 2 tabs of acid, like good luck remembering everything, right? Like good luck, like until you really understand LSD, being able to work with that medicine. Same with mushrooms. Like you can take a gram, you know, or something like that. But, you know, with cannabis, it has this very unique ability to just show you that it's all you, right? If you go into an experience and you're like, man, my life sucks and blah, 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 then you're going to have a shitty experience. But if you go into that experience, instead of saying, man, my life sucks, be like, you know what? What if my life didn't suck? What would that look like? Then you will have a positive experience. And it's all you. And that's what cannabis really has illustrated to me. It did it when I was 16. I just had no idea how to explain it or contextualize it. But it showed me that everything in life is up to us. And that is one of the best lessons that we can ever learn in life. Think about in the mainstream right now how much they're trying to glorify victimizing people, certain genders or lack thereof, certain ethnicities, right? Yes, you are a victim. Yes, it's because when you are a victim, life happens to you. And as a result, you can't be an ego and a creator. You can only be one, right? Ego, life happens to. A creator, life happens by, right? And for. And so think about in the mainstream why they would want more people feeling victimized. Because when they feel victimized, they feel powerless to change anything. And when they feel powerless to change anything, they are easily controllable based on dopamine and other things. So it's much easier to control a population that thinks they're victimized and powerless than it is to change a very empowered, community or society. And so start realizing there is a war out there for your consciousness. And this is not to, spread fear or anything, because honestly, it's not even a battle. these powers that shouldn't be, they are coming from a lack of that which is reality. There is only love, right? There is only God. And so these people are coming from a very negatively polarized point of view. And to quickly give context to that, negatively polarized equals ego, positively polarized equals God or service to others, right? Whereas negative is service to self and egotistical. So you think about like, the Sith Lords in Star Wars, that's negative polarization. You think about the planet on Dune, right? The Dune takes place on negatively polarized, just to give people some real world examples. It's the same shit happening now. Think about all this horrible stuff coming out with children and all of this stuff. You know who does that? People that don't have any conscience, people that have a completely closed heart chakra. And if you read the Law of One, that is exactly what Ra talks about, is that certain people will polarize more towards the negative and certain people will polarize more towards the positive. And I don't mean right here to try to say that that's wrong or bad. Luke Skywalker, it took Darth Vader to have Luke Skywalker tap into his ability to save the universe, right? Or save the Jedi Order. So Darth Vader played a very important role, even though he was perceived as evil, right? People like Hitler, people that have done horrible things. Well, they also catalyzed a lot of people going, we'll never fucking let that happen again. Now, if you look at the modern day world, you could argue it is happening again in many ways. But at the end of the day, the hero needs a certain reason to be able to feel courageous enough to wake up. A very, microcosm example is when that company came in and I realized they weren't good people with what they were doing. They were asking us to lie about why the flower wasn't coming out good because they didn't know how to grow it and they were getting mold and all these things. That was a negative polarized type action. And it took that to wake up and allow me to make a choice and go, I'm not that. I'm never going to be that. So I have to make a choice and shit or get off the pot. And that's what allowed me to fully choose to be positively polarized, be in service to others and go, no, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to tell people the honest truth, which is this company that took us over has no idea what they're doing. And I'm not going to be affiliated with them anymore. Not they're bad people. I'm just going to tell them the facts, because these people coming in had trusted me for years. And now I'm supposed to lie to them for this company that doesn't give a shit about me. I'm like, fuck that. Right. But I'm grateful because it took that for me to make that decision. So I don't want anyone to leave this podcast being like, oh my God, doom and gloom, things are bad. No, things are exactly at the right proportions right now for more and more people to make a choice. The choice is your free will. But I will tell you, and everyone gets this to make this choice on their own, there's only one that will lead to true joy. And that is positively polarizing, being in service to others and realizing there's only one being here. And when I judge someone else, I'm not judging someone else. I'm judging myself. When I give love to someone else, I'm not really giving love to someone else. I'm giving love to me. And when we start realizing that, the world will change almost overnight, and that is the reality that I work every day to usher in more in my own life and also in the people I work with. And those are the people I'm looking to find more and more. That's who's in my mastermind. That's who in my groups. That's who I do one-on-one work with, is how do we all come together like the Wu-Tang Clan and bring unique magic to the world? We all have our own magic, but we come together to create these epic experiences like Breathe with Cannabis or the retreats I host or just get-togethers around a fire where we can all laugh hysterically, hit some volcano bags, have some fun, play some can jam, play with Nerf guns, and and then the next day get up, slam some coffee and rock work or do a mastermind on how we can get our businesses out there more, whatever. Like have all the sides of it, right? Like life is here to be experienced, and I think at the end of the day, the more of us that just start realizing that we can have whatever we want and we can be whatever we want so long as it's in alignment with us. And if we do that, God will support us in that. It's something everyone has to come to on their own if they choose to. But I will tell you, knowing a lot of people like Czech and Aubrey and all these people, and also just a lot of other amazing people that are friends and family of mine and clients, every single person I've ever met that does this has magical things happen in their life. So everyone gets to make their own choice, but discernment is the ultimate key muscle here to wield in reality, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, magical shit happened for me, man, for sure. There's one thing that I struggle to articulate because it's so complex and so fast moving is this sort of like creator economy and like the different world that we're stepping into and the different ways in which people can make a living, and these things that you're speaking about and encouraging others to to find their true purpose and to follow that ruthlessly. It's like when I look at it, it almost feels like for a lot of people this is one of the best times in history to sort of like actualize that, like actualize themselves. And there is the true ability to actually hone in on the specific things you think your life force is good at and can do. And, and to distill that down and to provide value to people. Like it's as real and possible as it's ever been. And it's really interesting that that's happening in conjunction with a lot of other things. And maybe that's a whole nother conversation, because I'm about to open up a whole nother can of worms, I can just tell. But there was another point I wanted to make. It really just came to mind. You were speaking about, people controlling us, right? And one of the things you brought up was dopamine. And I think that there's a lot of different ways in which we're controlled. There's a lot of different receptor sites and things that control our perception of reality and how we navigate that. But I do think that the dopamine one is a really important one. And when you think about it, kind of coming back to like using cannabis as like a training ground within the training ground, right? Because cannabis, while it plays on lots of different receptor sites in the endocannabinoid system in this incredibly complex way, one of the things that cannabis is, especially high THC strains, is heavily dopaminergic. And so there is this bit of discipline that is truly required and able to be able to harness that power of the the dopamine hit being available to you, but having the discipline to use it intentionally. And I think that and I was just thinking about it when you're talking about, I was like, that's another great like training ground for learning how to navigate this heavily dopaminergic world that's constantly trying to like pull your attention.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, dude, like it's a big part of it, and at the end of the day, like what is dopamine, right? For me anyway, it's a feeling of feeling safe. It's a feeling of searching for love, and feeling some good type of feeling. So the question becomes, when did you become cut off from God? And I'm not saying dopamine is bad, right? Like I enjoy a cup of coffee here and there. I enjoy cannabis, etc. I enjoy tobacco. I enjoy, Netflix every once in a while, right? Like I'm not like a lot of people that you may meet in the world that are like, oh, I'm so restrictive of everything and I renounce all worldly desires. Why? Because to renounce them would make them more real. I'm just here to experience. And as long as nothing comes in the way of me being able to fulfill my dream and being able to be a highly optimized individual, I just don't stress about it anymore. I used to be really strict. I didn't have sugar for 3 years at one point. I didn't have caffeine for 7. I didn't connect with tobacco for 10. And at the end of the day, my body was riddled with tension. And I started getting headaches and all this stuff. Why? Because it was just like bracing. No, I can't, right? Because I didn't have faith in myself. Now at this point, because I didn't have something to stand for. So for all I knew, if I drank coffee, I would fall off the deep end again and start drinking a bunch of caffeine because I didn't have that anchor point of the why. I think that the reason that dopamine has become such a big thing is because people don't have a purpose. A lot of people don't know why they're alive. And that's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure to go through every day existing, going to a certain job, hanging out with certain people that you don't know why you're doing any of this, versus if you understand, like for me, right, like being able to help people unlock their unique magic and bring it to the world so they can light up the world and help people wake up. That's a really important mission for me. So now if I go to a bar with some friends, I don't drink at all, but like, it's probably a bad example, but like, let's just play it out. If I go to a bar and someone's like, have a beer, I'm like, no, thanks. I got to wake up tomorrow and do a call. And I'm not on point if I do that. Right. But if someone's like, hey, let's hang out and connect some cannabis. Cool. I know I can connect with cannabis and wake up the next day and be fine. So I'm going to choose that. Why? Not because cannabis or alcohol is better or worse, because I know I can perform the way I want to perform after connecting with cannabis. I can't with alcohol. That's the only reason I don't do it. Right. Not because alcohol is bad, it's poison, whatever. Yeah, all that could be true. But again, if this is all a dream world, none of that is actually real as well, except the belief of it, right? So at the end of the day, I just go based on feeling, right? Like what helps me feel on point, what puts me over the edge, and then stay within those lines. Know your limits and stay within them. And if you have that anchor point, it makes things a lot easier, and you don't need to go around in life being terrified of things. Like that's why I'm not a big fan of the 12-step program in AA, because first of all, in terms of identity work, you really want to, 10 years after you've stopped drinking, start every meeting with, hi, I'm Ryan, I'm still an addict. Not, hey, I'm Ryan and I'm in the process of not becoming an addict, or I used to be an addict and I'm aware enough not to dive back into that, but I'm no longer an addict. Like it just kind of feels silly to me. Now, I'm grateful it helps certain people. I'm not here to knock anything. But again, it's just for me as a person, that doesn't work for me. I also don't want to be terrified thinking that if I go to a bar, I'm going to fall down and be completely where I was at 10 years ago. That doesn't feel like empowerment to me. What feels like empowerment is figuring out the real reasons at the root of these so-called addictions, getting clear on it, being able to realize that in some way, shape, or form, it's a distortion between either my relationship with God, well, ultimately my relationship with God at the foundation, and then how that plays out, what I think is possible for me, how I view myself, what my self-image is, what my self-esteem is, what my worth is, right? When I start to get clear on those things and I start to be around other individuals that build me up instead of break me down, and I get to build them up instead of break them down, all of a sudden you become unfuckwittable, because now you know why you're alive, you know who you are, you know where you're going, you know where you come from, you know what your purpose is, and you're just whatever. You know, if someone kills you, all right, I'm infinite, whatever. You know, like it literally, like that's why when they talk about, not to bring deities into this, but you know, Jesus, when he was on the cross getting stakes driven through him, you know, like people were like, you know, the Romans were like, why don't you feel pain? He's like, because I know what I really am. Like, you only feel pain if you have unconscious guilt in your mind. So once you let go of all that stuff, and I'm not pretending I've let go of all of it by any means, but like, even when you start letting go of it, you start realizing that you can just relax way more. And like, worst ultimate case, a meteor comes right now and wipes us all out. Well, this dream will end, but the dream will also keep going too until you break that reincarnation loop. So, you know, for me, that's the reality I choose to live in, because I've tried the other one and it just simply didn't work for me, you know, and that's what I recommend for everyone. Just pick the reality that is the most exciting for you. You want to believe in Santa Claus? Cool. If that makes your reality more fun, who cares, right? Like, you want to believe that God is a flying spaghetti monster and that makes your reality more fun? Go believe it. You want to believe the earth is flat? Go believe it. If it makes your reality more fun, who cares what the facts are? Who cares? Just do whatever, as long as it's not going to hurt yourself or anyone else. Do whatever makes your reality the most fun. Do your best. Forget the rest.
Yeah, it was Paul Chek. I heard Paul Chek say once that addiction is any sort of repeated behavioral pattern that you have that doesn't lead to the results that you want. And I was like, bam! I was like, he hit the nail on the head with that one. It was really good, and it reminds me a lot of this entire conversation that we had, and looping it back to conscious cannabis consumption. You know, it kind of flies in the face and of the sort of disempowerment that you see, like you alluded to, with things like the 12-step program and a lot of the basic understanding and propaganda out there around addiction and what it even is, right? Because, you know, it's you can consume cannabis and actually use it as a psychological tool to help you forge the reality that you want to exist in. Then there's a behavior pattern that you have that is actually helping you, you know, shift into the reality that you want to go in. Then I wouldn't consider that an addiction. I would consider that a tool. And I think that, you know, cannabis is one of these ones that's so prevalent and so widely just casually consumed without a lot of forethought. And so, yeah, I think that what you're doing is awesome, man. I think that you're making a really cool little ripple, and I think that you're a really sweet, intelligent guy, and I've appreciated having you on the podcast today, dude. Is there anything else you'd like to leave people with?
I mean, you know, I think you said it best at the end, man. Like, you know, what I would recommend to everyone is be very aware of how you're spending your time and what information you're taking in. There's a lot of people out there saying a lot of things, and there's a lot of people out there that are saying amazing things. There are also a lot of people out there that are wounded and speaking from that wounded place as if they're not wounded. And again, this isn't to judge anyone, but like I said earlier, and I'll say again, the ultimate muscle to wield here is discernment. And to give a real world example of this, during the pandemic, there were a lot of people on our news stations saying this is what health means, right? You need to get this thing to be healthy. But all you needed to do was look at them and realize they weren't healthy. So what place did they have trying to teach health? And so at the end of the day, when you are thinking about what to listen to, who to listen to, what course to take, what program to invest in, what mastermind to join, whatever it is, really tune into the energy of the person that is running that thing, running that podcast, or hosting that course, or the author of the book, and ask yourself, are those the results I truly want in my life? And if the answer is no, you don't need to have any certain belief around, oh, that person's dumb, or, oh my goodness, I used to like that person and now I don't. No, you just choose what's fun, like a kid, right? A kid doesn't ask himself, why don't I want to play with the toy mom and dad just bought me, right? They just go to the next toy. Be like a kid. Just follow the fun and feel with what resonates and makes you feel the most expansion. The best people I've ever met in my life in terms of teachers and educators on a lot of the things I talked about today are the people that when you're around, you feel like a kid. You get so much joy. Like, you ever go to a workshop at Paul's house? Dude, it is so fucking fun. There's like 30 people there. It's at his personal house. Everyone's outside during breaks with their shirt off, tanning. Everyone's ripping bags. I'm like trying to make bags and sneak it over when Paul's talking. Paul will be like, hey, give me that thing, right? Like, it's just fun, right? Like, that's what you're going for, and whether that person is you, Gabe, or me, or Paul, or anyone, right? It doesn't matter. Everyone's going to have different people to follow. Realize also nothing's personal, right? Like the 4 agreements say, if someone gets mad at you or triggered over you, it has nothing to do with you, right? Even if they're saying, Gabe, it's you that I'm triggered over, it's actually not you, because who is you? You're them, they're you, right? So at the end of the day, don't take things personally and be like a kid, right? Follow the fun, and you will end up in the exact places with the right people doing the exact things that charge you up the most. And when you do that, you become a lighthouse, like I talked about, and you have a consistently overflowing cup from which to pour out into the world that is completely you. And, again, like, no one can recreate you. You are the only one that has your unique set of fingerprints that have never and will never walk the planet again. And it now gets to be the time to figure out what your unique set of fingerprints can do that no one else has ever been able to or will ever be able to do in the way that you do. And if you follow that, you will have the most fulfilling life possible, period.
I really love that you used that agreement, because that's always been my favorite agreement of the 4 agreements.
One of the most challenging ones.
Right. And in this funny way, I've always felt like it somewhat kind of included and summed up the other 3 agreements as well too. And it's I think that's really important. Don't take it personal, because when you have that level of sort of honesty and awareness and empathy for other people, you see that truly it's just they were babies and like life experiences, and and it's but I love you, dude. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the Launchpad podcast. Peace out. Yeah. Much love, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Peace.